will be My Adventures in Michigan, and the cover will include a map of Michigan as well as the 4 Great Lakes that surround our fabulous state. So let's get started. First of all, please make sure to draw lightly. We want to make sure you can erase if you have a problem. Second thing, please make sure, that's all I ever want you to do, is to do your best. Now, when we take a look at our paper, we want to make sure that our paper is vertical, just like my black rectangle right here. We want our paper to be going the tall way or the hamburger way. Now, before we start, I'd like you to take your fingers and I'd like you to make some marks in your corners. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking 2 fingers and measuring from the corner to your 2 fingers, right there and right there. Now, because this is a video, I can't actually do that, but this is going to help us be aware of where our edges are, and we might kind of invade our edges, but at least we have a starting place. Now let's start by looking at our Upper Peninsula. Take a look at the map on the wall, and you will notice that the Upper Peninsula is pretty long. From east to west, from Minnesota all the way to Canada, it is a pretty large space of land. So we're going to start by drawing the Upper Peninsula, and it's going to cover the majority of our paper going across. So we want to make sure that we give it plenty of space. So we're going to start over on the left-hand side, towards the top, of course, and we're going to start at the very tip. And we're going to slowly make our way up to that little bit of a hook. Now that hook is the Keweenaw Peninsula. There's a whole bunch of copper mines there that you can now tour. Anytime during this video, just ask politely to pause it, and we can pause and allow you to catch up. Now from the Keweenaw Peninsula, we are going to head east, and it's kind of bumpy. The nice thing about our state is it is kind of bumpy, and that's okay. It makes drawing it a little bit easier. I'm going to stop and give you a chance to catch up. I want to point out that right here is where we connect with Canada, one of 3 times. This is Sault Ste. Marie. And then we round the east end of the lake, or of the Upper Peninsula, and this is the Straits of Mackinac, and this is where the Mackinac Bridge is. So now from the Mackinac Bridge, let's keep going. And we're going to keep going west. And as we go west, you'll notice that there are some fingers that kind of pull away from the main part of the land. We want to try to include those, but if you don't, that's okay. And then I'm going to go almost to the edge of my paper and connect back where I started. Here is the Upper Peninsula. Now, we want to focus our attention on the Lower Peninsula. The Lower Peninsula, as we know, is shaped like a mitten. So we do want to try to have that shape. And we're going to start back at the Mackinac, the Straits of Mackinac, right here where the Mackinac Bridge would be. And if you notice, the Upper Peninsula is actually longer than the Lower Peninsula. So the Lower Peninsula is going to take up a little bit more than half of our paper. We don't want it stretching from side to side. It's just not that big. So again, you can also pause the video. Here we go, starting back at the Straits of Mackinac, going down to Traverse City. I'm going to bulge out a little bit, and then I'm going to come back in, and then I'm going to look like I'm heading towards Chicago. Once I get down to the Indiana border, it is pretty straight line, and then we're going to head over to Ohio. Now I'm actually going to stop at Ohio, and I want to go back up to the Straits of Mackinac, and I want to make the east side of our state. Again, remember, you can feel free to pause or ask for the video to be paused if I'm going too fast. Now we want to make sure we get the Saginaw Bay, and that's what makes our state unique, and then back down. Now you'll notice I've totally ignored my borders on the right hand side of my paper, and that is a-okay. These pictures will be laminated or in some cases bound, so we'll be okay. One of the other things that we want to do at this point in time is that if you have any space between the Upper and Lower Peninsulas, you can go ahead and add the Mackinac Bridge. If you have a big space, you could actually draw the bridge. I don't have enough space. I'm just going to add a little road. I might add a tower. There we go. I have a little bridge. So from here, we want to identify each of the lakes that we have in our great state. And we're talking about the Great Lakes, not any little lakes that we might have a cabin on or that we might go fishing on. We want to talk about the big, huge lakes that surround our state. So let's start at the top. First of all, when we go to our original start point, we need to have this line go off the page. That's where Minnesota and Wisconsin are. Above this is all one lake. Over to the right-hand side, we need to add in Canada. And Canada is going to kind of jet in and jet out. We don't need to label Canada, but you can if you want to. On this body of lake, does anyone know what this lake would be? Whisper it to your neighbor. Now whisper it to the whole class. That's right, if you said Lake Superior. So we're going to write Lake Superior in this space. Now, if you can't see it too well in this video, don't worry. It's written on the board. Lake Superior. Now, what we want to do is we need to add Wisconsin to this side of our paper. We're not going to necessarily label Wisconsin, but it needs to be there so that we can put in the rest of our Great Lakes. So I'm going to start here and I'm just going to draw. Wisconsin has a peninsula like we do. It kind of jets out, and then this kind of curves around where Chicago is, and this whole state is another lake. What lake is this space? Tell your neighbor, and then please tell the class. That's right, it's Lake Michigan. So what we want to do is we want to write Lake Michigan. Again, you want to write it light, just in case you spell something wrong. Now, over here, we actually have, this is all lake, and this is a bay, but it's all part of the same body of water. Anybody know what this lake, Great Lake, is? Oh, great, I see some hands are up. Go ahead and tell the person across from you this time what this lake is. All right, tell the class. That's right, it is Lake Huron. Lake Huron is a pretty cold lake. Hopefully you have a better time fitting it in than I did. Now, we have one more lake to put in, but before we can do that, we need to add Canada. And Canada is going to squeeze in, hopefully you have more room than I do, right there along the edge, near the eastern side. And we actually have two bridges to Canada. We have one right here in Port Huron, and then we have one in Detroit. The one in Port Huron is called the Blue Water Bridge, and the one in Detroit is called the Ambassador Bridge. There's also a tunnel in Detroit as well. So beyond Canada, there is a little bit of a lake down here. Does anyone know what teeny tiny lake down here it is? And this is a Great Lake. Oh, not as many hands this time, I see. All right, well, let me give you this one. This is Lake Erie. Now, Lake Erie, I actually don't have enough room, so I'm going to add Lake Erie, the word Lake Erie, in Ohio. Hopefully you can write small enough and you'll have room in yours. So now we've drawn the map of Michigan. We have the upper and lower peninsulas, and we've identified our 4 of our 5 lakes. Now, just as a side note, does anybody know what the 5th Great Lake is? It does not touch Michigan, but it's also very important. It connects to Lake Erie on the other side. Any guesses? None? Oh my, it's Lake Ontario. Lake Ontario is the 5th Great Lake. So, at this point, we have what we've set out to accomplish. We have our lakes, we have our land, and now we need to add our title. When we